It is a new podcast, Draft to Deadline, Inside the Reporter's Notebook. And I am your host, Brian Dorman. It is so great to be back here inside the podcast room. It has been a minute. I've been working on so many special projects. Last time I was in here was with Catherine Phillips. We had a podcast for a minute that was called Brian and Kat Unscripted. And we had so much fun with that podcast. But we ran into a real challenge, and it was scheduling. The two of us are just not on the same schedule. We work the same hours, but she is out in the field a lot of times when I'm able to record in-house, and it just was not working out. As you know, the long-running joke between me and Kat was there were more episodes recorded with guests filling in for Kat than actually me and Kat. And so unfortunately that podcast just kind of ran its course, but I'm really excited to launch this one. Again, it is Draft to Deadline, Inside the Reporter's Notebook. It is my hope and my goal that any reporter can come in here and launch this podcast and be a part of it and take you inside some stories that really stand out and mean something to them, to be able to air an extended interview with you and talk about the process, the transparency of how we gather the news, why we share certain stories, how we share them, and what the big takeaways are from those stories. The first one, the pilot episode here that we're going to launch with, is my interview with Paul Swearingen. And you're going to hear the full interview that I had with Paul. It is briefly edited, and some of those edits are where people are walking by, somebody had cussed in the background, there was delivery trucks that day. I had what I thought was a bright idea, which was to shoot Paul's interview in tower outside on a sidewalk in front of a bakery and a bar. It was a great idea because it looked aesthetically great. Interviews that are done outside or where there's a lot of natural light look the best. What I did not take into account was the noise that we would have that day from people walking by, from the bakery itself getting deliveries out for the day, and alcohol being delivered to that bar. And so there I think were maybe 4 or 5 edits that I made in this. Most of it is not content. Most of it were those pauses where we had to wait 4 or 5 minutes for a delivery that was happening near us or behind us. So I'm really excited for you to hear Paul's interview, and on the backside of it, we're going to chat about it briefly, some of my takeaways from the interview and how I even heard about Paul to begin with. We'll talk about that on the other side of this, but for now, I want you to be able to hear the full interview between me and Paul Swearingen. The unconventional pastor. What does that mean to you?
That's an interesting question. My main message is God is not mad at you. There's no being out there with a long white beard who is a good father who will set you on fire if you don't worship him enough. And I just want to release people from the real trauma that came from my own religious upbringing and religious life. And so I guess I felt like that was unconventional. And a little bit different message. And then from my religious heritage, it was, you don't have to vote Republican to be Christian. And that was surprisingly a very unpopular message in my religious circles.
There are folks who are going to tune in and say, whoa, Paul looks a little different than we're used to seeing him. Paul Swearingen has quite a story, quite a life journey. Walk me through how we got to this point and how you're feeling today.
I grew up in a household where there were expectations of maleness, and there was trauma in all of that in my childhood. And I realized that male Paul person that I was really a mask. I had to become this person to survive in the socio-religious world in which I was growing up. The sports guy, the woman chaser, the student council president, all of those things. And I began to realize that none of those things ever satisfied me. I could never live up to the expectations around me. And so that put me on an emotional health journey. And I began to discover there's way more in here than that Paul male person I had to be.
Part of this is going to be about education as well. Educate folks on how you identify today.
That's a little bit of a moving target, and I generally try to avoid labels for anyone. but I am a dissociative identity disorder, multiple, non-gendered, fluid human being. But I generally don't try to identify with any particular label. I just want to love people and love myself.
Yeah.
In fact, somebody commanded that once, love your neighbor as yourself. I've heard that somewhere before.
Yeah. You do consider yourself to be trans?
I do.
Yeah.
Trans just means I don't fit the box of our societal religious framework. But yeah, it does then make me scary. It does then make me scary to the world, and so be it.
Yeah. How does that make you feel to feel that way?
You know, I've always been the kid in the Emperor's New Clothes fable that when everybody was like, oh, look at the Emperor's outfit, isn't it amazing? Knowing that their eyes were telling them something different. And then the kid says, wait, what? You know, and so being looked at as an outlier and maybe an agitator even is not something new for me necessarily. So I'm okay with it, but then as I said in my video the other day, there's still this little creature behind all that saying, I wish somebody would love me. And so it's a real dichotomy, but it's also a space in which I'm pretty familiar.
So for those who are a little maybe confused at this point, you feel just most comfortable this way.
You're talking about attire?
Aesthetics.
Yeah. That's such a good question. I'll probably say that a lot. Yeah, I mean, what are clothes at the end of the day? Who decides what is male and female clothing? Yeah, this is how I feel comfortable to dress. I never felt comfortable in the mask of traditional maleness. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just so fun to be able to dress differently. Like, not to besmirch your outfit, but like polo and jeans and nice shoes. Those were my choices, you know, before. And now I love that there's just a whole world and array of colors and fits and different things I can do and accessorizing, and it's just so much fun. And I want to tell men out there, like, you don't know what you're missing when you start to broaden your horizons a little bit. And what were high heels and pink clothing and wigs and makeup and nail polish, but all made for men in human history. So who decided now these are marks of femininity? But at the end of the day, if they're seen as feminine, that's okay, because there is feminine in here. I think we all have some mix of maleness and femininity. And when we're forced to push one or the other into a box, we are not living to our full emotional and spiritual well-being. And who wants to do that?
And that is really the platform that you have on social media. Your TikTok, your Instagram really surrounds that message in a really big way. What do you really think that your major takeaway from your social media is, or what you want it to be?
I say that I want to give permission to people to not believe the way they've always been told to believe. Now, do I have some great authority to give that permission? Not necessarily, but that's why I use pastor still in my name, so that I can have some sense of religious authority for people to be able to say, no, you're free to think differently. Thinking is not a sin. Actually, it's a command of our scripture. And so I guess just giving people permission to think outside the box they've had to live in, to realize they live in a box. Romans 12:2 is my favorite New Testament verse, and it says, don't be conformed to the age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so you can know what is good and right and perfect. And what that's saying is we need to constantly be being changed so that we don't get stuck in our era, in our age, in our echo chamber, in our mindset, in our groupthink. Get out of that box and take everything out and say, this was a good belief for me before, is it still helpful today? And have permission and community to step out of that box, knowing it's going to be messy when we do.
You talk a lot too about boys.
Was that too long of an
No,
answer?
it was fine.
Okay.
You talk a lot about boys and how boys are raised and boys are kind of told to suppress emotions, and a lot of your videos do transcend that message of really allowing everybody, boys and girls, to feel. Talk to me a little bit about that and why that message is so important to you.
I'll tell this story, and it may work to help your story or not, but it may just be background. But when I was first diagnosed with DID, my therapist at the time said, "You're my 37th client with dissociative identity disorder. How many of those do you think are male?" I said, "I don't know, probably a low number, a third." And he says, "No, you are the first male client I've ever had with DID." And he said, most men do not get diagnosed with DID unless they're in prison and have a forced psychiatric evaluation, which tells me men are not allowed to explore their emotional health. We're told, buck up, trooper, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, be a big boy. And I think a lot of people in biological male bodies are trying to live up to some John Wayne expectation. And John Wayne's just a character on a screen. The guy's name was Marion, for God's sakes, in real life. So I use the line a lot, big boys should cry, because we're told, oh, don't cry like a girl. Don't run like a girl. Don't throw like a girl. Don't cry like one. And it's super harmful to that young child.
Talk to me about another message that really resonates on your social media.
So when I stepped out of my religious community and in effect deconstructed my religious beliefs, I lost my community. And I felt like for a time I had lost my spiritual connection to my religious heritage. But I learned, I don't have to give that up just because I'm not agreeing with the mindset of my community or my former community, that there actually is still a lot of beauty in the Christian story, in the Jesus story. And I don't even have to argue over whether Noah and his ark were real or not. I just look for the wisdom in the story. And so my message is there is a 21st century spirituality that is so much better than what we get inside the four walls of a church building one day a week. And I want people to be free to just explore a spirituality that's so much bigger than I have to join this one particular religion, say this particular prayer, and then adhere to some arbitrary set of rules as interpreted by one of the 30,000 Christian sects out there. So it is again really about permission to say, well, what if my spirituality has always gone through the pathway of Jesus? I don't have to give that up just because I'm not attending a church building on a Sunday morning.
At what point did your social media kind of blow up?
So, I had never heard of a TikTok, and I was doing a lot of Facebook. My kids were telling me about TikTok. They had told me about Vines before. My kids were telling me about TikTok. And so I'm like, all right, I opened up an account and I started posting stuff. And I was so fascinated. At this entrepreneurial spirit of these young people on there that were dancing and doing all these other things to have a life. And so I just mostly went on TikTok because I was fascinated, and I would post something every once in a while, and it was just this little thing. And I made a video in 2016 about why, as a Christian, I could not vote for Donald Trump for president. And I woke up the next morning and I told my wife, something's wrong with my TikTok account. It says I have 2,200 followers. That's not right. And I looked back in like an hour and I'm like, I'm over 3,500 followers. And the next thing I knew, I didn't understand how TikTok worked at the time, but I looked and, That video now has almost 500,000 views, and I got at one point to, I don't know, 133,000 followers or something, and here I am, this 50-something guy, old man, having all these people listen to me on TikTok, and it was really a surreal experience.
Yeah. How do you feel like you are received and perceived on social media, comment-wise? Do you feel like you are getting support? Do you feel like you are making a difference? Do you feel like you are heavily criticized?
Yes. All of the above. I get a lot of just horrifyingly ugly comments from people, some from people I've known in my life. But I understand, that's what they're told to believe, and it gets very scary when somebody starts challenging your community identity. I know because I've gone through that process of losing that community identity, so I get it. But what's sad about it is they all say the same things verbatim, which tells you they're getting it from somewhere. There is some source that's telling this kind of right-wing Christianity story that they're all reciting and not even realizing the influence of that. So I have a heart for those people, but I also see Jesus unabashedly standing for the marginalized and the poor and the foreigner and the economically disadvantaged, and doing it in a way that's really harsh and sarcastic at the religious spirits that came at him. So I'm not afraid to fire back at that. The God that I was taught as a child doesn't exist. If we can get rid of, there's this being in the sky on a throne watching me every day and keeping a checklist of whether I've been naughty or nice, is a shame-based, painful, trauma-inducing theology. So when I say God, I'm talking about something much broader than that Gandalf-looking guy we've been taught about. And that guy, well, let me take that back. That spirit, that divineness, that mysticism that I still believe exists out there, even though I've dabbled in atheism at times. But I think that spirit that exists out there is telling everyone, find your path to connect to wholeness and divine wisdom and divine love. And don't get hung up on the logistics quite so much. I had something else good to say and I've lost it, so I'll let you. I did want to say, I get DMs from people that say, I felt like I was all alone. I couldn't believe what I had believed before. Many of them, like once Trump came along and people I loved were going in this direction, I had to step away and I thought I was alone, and you have made me feel not alone with what you say on your social media. And I wouldn't give that up for any amount of angry trolls whatsoever.
Do you have any young people reaching out to you saying, I feel more confident in myself now to be myself because of you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I love it so much. Still, most of my audience is a little bit on the older side, but I'm also, I also work in teaching with young people, and being able to say to a young person, you're okay. There's something about these older generations that say everybody has to be like us or they're something, whatever. There's something undesirable. And I just love our younger generations and think they're amazing and so much smarter and caring and loving and understanding of the world than I ever was at that age. And so to be able to tell somebody in that younger millennial, older Gen Z group that you're okay, it fills my heart with joy. And I also think it saves lives when we tell young people you're not bad. There's no God that's mad at you. we stop them from wanting to exit this world sometimes. And I wish Christians cared about that as much as they care about whether I say shit on social media or not.
I'm curious where the strength comes from. I think you look fabulous, but I know that you walking into certain places here in the Central Valley, you're turning heads and probably getting nasty comments set to your face. Does that happen?
Not as much as you might think. It has. But people are pretty amazing when we're sitting across from each other. Very few people spout propaganda points when we're sitting together on a table. So that's been part of my, I don't know what I'm trying to say, my coming out, I guess you could say, for want of a better term. So I find beautiful people every day who just want to be kind to other human beings. You say strength, I feel like such a chicken. I have hidden who I am for so many years. And I talk with queer and trans young people who were kicked out of the house at 14 years old and had to survive. And I think, oh, I'm doing nothing compared to these super brave young people. My life is pretty good, and if somebody calls me some name on social media, but I get to tell that child, you're good, and we love you, and you are human and deserve to exist, no matter what Trump says, no matter what the government says, no matter what your community says. Man, that's so beautiful and worth it. I wouldn't give that up for anything.
As a former TV personality, and as one myself, I know how important it is to feel liked. We want everybody to like us. We want our viewers to enjoy us and like us and want to be friends with us. I know it must be one thing to get nasty comments. You mentioned you'd known some people in real life on social media, but those comments are coming in from around the world. Do you feel like when you watch this story back and you do see some of the comments on social media under this very story that may be hurtful, is it harder when it's your own community?
You know, I just think I calculated that in as a part of the process. Sometimes I don't know if my brain works the same way as others do. We all want to be liked. Every human being needs, I don't need anybody to, no, we all need to be liked. But, no, you're good. Go ahead.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm just waiting until you go by.
Oh, have a good day.
You're great. What was I saying?
Oh, we were talking about being liked. And
Yeah.
the desire to want to feel that way.
So there were times in this journey I thought, I should just go move to the high desert where nobody knows me and just draw in the curtains and DoorDash all my food and order things from Amazon, and life would be so much easier. I'd be less of a burden on my wife and children. But I decided to stay in my community. And ultimately that was a purposeful decision, because I want to say, you know who I was. And now I'm that person you're being told is a monster, that you're supposed to be afraid of. Do you think the story you're being told is true, or is there an agenda behind that? I'm not a monster, but if you want to call me one, then I'll be a monster to you, and I'll challenge what you believe, and I'll ask you to think, is everything you've known really true, or are you willing to challenge those beliefs so that you're not stuck in a rut of indoctrination? And I made that choice, and kind of when I do that, when I left TV, when I left the radio business, I don't really look back. I'm like, this is the choice I've made, and now I'm going to deal with the consequences. So if somebody I know says something on this, I've chosen for that to be a part of the journey.
Did you feel authentically you as Paul Swearingen, the sports reporter, versus you, Paul Swearingen, today?
So as that guy, I never felt I matched up to what I was supposed to be, ever. I didn't really realize why. I just thought I was maybe had a demon or was just a messed up dude, and that's the way it was always going to be. I'm really sad when I look at who I was. I wouldn't give that person up because I have amazing children. I have an amazing family and spouse and household. But who that person had to be makes me very sad. And when I see that person that I was, I feel sorry knowing that there is a whole lot of other biological males out there who feel the same thing. And I've met a ton of them who said, I never felt like I could match the masculinity I was told I had to live up to. And I hated myself for it. And I want those bio males to stop having to feel like, have to feel like they didn't match up. Because of it, there's a whole lot of little boys running around in adult male skin who are frustrated as heck, saying, I matched up what I was told to do and I didn't get the payoff that I was supposed to get, and I'm not happy. So that was my story, and now I'm really working on, like, it's okay to want to be happy. It's okay to want to be comfortable in my skin.
And a lot of that is profession-based, right? I mean, it is hard to be a sports anchor or reporter and be able to express yourself in this way. A mayor, a police chief, a lot of it is a business person, a business owner. A lot of it is, do you find that as you're exploring this and having conversations with other people that they feel like they have to act or be a certain way because of what they do for a living?
Yes, and for me, I would say my lack of emotional and spiritual well-being was much more an inhibitor to my success than looking different and acting different and having different beliefs. So I think there's a little bit of a false narrative that, oh, if you don't act the way you're supposed to act or be the person you're supposed to be, you're going to fail in so many ways. Because what I found is for all the people I've lost who won't walk alongside me anymore, I've found a whole bunch more people who are amazing, wonderful, and are saying, we are so on board with you. We are champions of your journey and of your story. And I think my opportunity for success in that environment is far beyond what I ever could do as being somebody I wasn't fully supposed to be.
Being Mr. Fresno for 2 terms was also a very masculine role too.
Some might say, but it's also fairly emasculating when your wife is more famous and powerful and more smart and more attractive and all the mores than you. So it did require some humility. It did require me being much more involved in the children's life. And I found all of that wonderful. I find my wife to be one of the most amazing people I've ever known, and to have to set aside a little masculinity to be a part of that, yeah, that was nothing. And I honestly pride myself on, I never thought, oh, I need some of the spotlight here, or I need people to know I'm masculine and when my wife is important. I think that's all signs of a shortcoming in that person when you feel that. When you're a strong, confident person, you can be behind somebody else's shadow, cheering them on and be okay.
So I know people are going to be very curious to know how your children feel about this.
How do I want to answer that? I know I've thought about this already. In a lot of ways, your family can't help but feel like they're losing somebody that was a part of their life. You're living as somewhat of a different person, although that person I was hasn't gone away. It just isn't the most prevalent part of me anymore, as I was forced to do. That's been hard for my children, and that's been really hard for me. But I realize that doing what I need to do to live well is a gift to them. I think taking steps like this will benefit my lineage for generations to come. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I think all of us are going to impact our family to 3 to 4 generations after us. And are we going to do that positively or negatively? And I feel like doing this, having braces at 59 years old, is me telling my children and putting into our family DNA that there's never a time not to think of what do I need to be a whole person, to be the best I can be, to show up for people around me. And that's always a messy process. I had a friend who said, and now I've accepted this saying as my own because I've repeated it enough times, but nurseries are messy, cemeteries are neat and clean. One of those has life in it and the other doesn't. So do we want to live in the mess of living where there's actual life? Or do we want to conform to some clean, comfy place where there isn't life? So stepping into the mess has been hard for my children and my spouse. But gosh, they're so brave as well. They're hanging in there on it. And we're learning that this is where life is on the other side of the pain of this journey, of the beauty of this journey, of the discovery, of the mess. And I encourage everyone. I'm not going to lie to you. Stepping out of the box you've always known is not fun. It's not clean. It is a mess. You fall apart. I need to wait here.
Yeah, we'll give it a second here. I didn't realize that Frosty Cakery had so much coming in and out of it.
Let me finish. Come on, you're good. Okay. But I promise it's worth it. Because what you leave behind, or the stuff that dies inside of you, creates nutrients for new life to grow, and that new life is so worth it.
How about Ashley? How does Ashley feel?
So all the things, right, I thought I was living with a certain person in a certain, let me start that over. So Ashley and I have been on a journey for quite a while. Started with being uncomfortable with the political association of our religion with a political ideology. And then with a religious group that was chasing, that hated Barack Obama and loves Donald Trump. Like, we just couldn't figure out how this worked. So we've been on that journey of deconstructing our view of life for a long time. Did we expect all of this to pop up out of the middle of it? No. But we've accepted it as part of the journey. Really hard when you think you have a particular life and then realize, oh, there was always something off a little bit about that. But we are partners. We've been together for a long time. We have a great life. And so we're just walking day to day trying to figure out, so what does it look like now? And she is an amazing person who's willing to make that journey with me. And for that, I'm so grateful.
You are now able to live your true, authentic self, but do you ever have guilt for your family?
Oh, hell yeah. There are parts in here who nonstop are saying, what are you doing? You could just keep living that way. You don't have that much longer to go, and let your kids be okay. Who am I to make people who matter to me uncomfortable? That was my whole job as a child, is make sure your parents are okay, because if they're not okay, you're not okay. And I'm realizing that's a really unhealthy way to live. So, yeah, I feel a lot of guilt at times for putting my family in an uncomfortable position. But I find that the more I understand the why of what I'm doing and the benefit, not only for me, but of them, I realize that we as human beings are allowed to make people uncomfortable and then invite them on the journey with us, and then they get to make the choice that they need to make to live their life. And we have to learn to be okay with that.
Do you feel like your family or anybody close in your circle is ever embarrassed by you or your appearance?
Yes. I almost don't know what else to say than that. But again, I think as I grow comfortable with knowing who I am and why I do what I do, I think it helps them to be comfortable too and understand and even enjoy being a part of it. Mm-hmm. My daughter is in musical theater, and all of her friends think I'm the coolest guy ever. They love me to death. So there is some benefit to it.
Is there anything Ashley particularly just does not like at all? Earrings, the jewelry, the nail polish, is there anything that just kind of really frustrates her?
I mean, it's just all been incremental. When I wanted to get my ears pierced, that was really hard, but she went with me to get it done. When my friend took me to get my fingernails painted, that was hard. And she definitely had that, what are people going to think? By the way, men, you should get your nails done. It's amazing. And then you get to look at them and go, God, that's so cool. I call it my therapy after therapy. I always schedule my nails right after my therapy appointment. But so it's been incremental, and all along the way, she's had to deal with being such a public person and constantly having to think about what are the consequences of this action going to be. And so that's been available in this process as well. But I think she's always been a little concerned about what's he going to say on the radio, what's he going to say from the pulpit, what's he going to say on social media. So she's kind of used to it coming from me now.
Do you ever share? Do you ever dip into her jewelry or
oh God, no.
wear her earrings?
No, absolutely not. For one, we're not even close to the same size, and if you act like we are, she would be so upset about that.
But earrings are earrings. She never grabs yours?
No, mine are cheap. Hers are beautiful and expensive. No.
Does she ever get frustrated and say, damn, your nails look better than mine?
I don't think she would admit it if she did. She might be a little jealous of my hair.
So there's some levity here, right?
Yeah.
But I know it's emotional. It's hard for you to talk about your family, and I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, there's always a thought of like, am I going to say something that's harmful to them? But I don't think so.
Is there anybody you look up to? I mean, this is very reminiscent of Caitlyn Jenner. You know, there's a lot of similarities here.
Oh God, Caitlyn Jenner.
Listen, athlete, had a beautiful, loving family. There's a whole bunch there that really does kind of line up a little bit. Did that inspire you at all to also say, listen, I want to live an authentic life like that too? Did that help you at all, or has anybody helped or inspired you? Or I know your therapist you give a lot of credit to. Who really has helped you formulate such a confident person that you are to feel this way and feel not ashamed of it?
Well, definitely my therapist was the first person ever in my life to tell me the way you feel is not only okay, it's not original. You're not unique. You're not the only person that feels this way. And that statement alone was life-changing. And I want to be able to tell people that, like, you're not alone. I mean, I appreciate Caitlyn Jenner, the attention that she's brought to the trans journey, but gosh, she's turned out to be so problematic in it that it's been hard for me to look at her as an inspiration. There is a guy, I shouldn't say, there is a human named Alok Vyed Menon, and I may have butchered that name, but Alok is a very hairy Middle Eastern biological male who wears the most incredible like dresses and makeup and has a full beard and has a hairy back and just says, I'm going to dress this way because I like it. And you don't have any right to tell me how I should or should not dress. And he goes around making speeches and doing performances. And that is a human being that I've looked at and said, yeah, this is who I am. Deal with it, world. And I really love that about them.
Yeah. As we finish up, I just want to allow you just the last thought. What do you want the final message to be on this interview?
Man, you've done a good job of getting most of my message out of me. So what would I want to end on? How's it going?
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. Yeah, I think just telling, sorry, come on. That is a beautiful dog. Now he's going to stop right there.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
There's so many things flying through my head. It's just, you, human being, are not bad. There's nothing wrong with you. Not conforming isn't a sin. Searching out your true self and truth of the universe is brilliant and scary and brave and fun and horrible and messy, and it's all worth it. Because shutting myself down, living in dissonance to be able to fit into a community is soul stealing, and for me at some point it made me want to exit this world of my own doing. And I don't live that way anymore. And living without that is a lot better.
You feel free.
I do feel free.
We can end there, but I also want to just ask you if you're willing to or want to share or educate people that because you appear this way, because you dress this way or act this way, this certainly does not make you gay in any way. Do you want to address that? Do you want to mention?
Do you think that's important?
You don't have to. No, but you know, I think that people will be surprised to find out when I met you for the first time and I said, "Oh, Ashley," and you said, "We're still married." I thought, "Oh," I was surprised by that actually, and so, you know, and I'm sure that had to be a question she asked you at the beginning of this was, "Oh my goodness, is my husband gay or bisexual or have any interest in men?" I don't know if that's something you want to address or not. I want to, of course, allow you to if you want to, or to educate people that you can be still a masculine person who feels comfortable in a more feminine sense and not be sexually attracted to men and still be able to live this authentic self. I want to allow you the opportunity if you want it. If you don't want it, we can end here.
Well, let me speak and see what comes out of my mouth, I guess. Early in this journey, I met young people who said, I don't want to be defined by a gender or a sexuality. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I am working on a master's in marriage and family therapy, and what we're learning is that nobody is autistic. A lot of people are on an autistic spectrum and have autism. It's something they deal with, not something they are. And I think sexuality is the same. To say I am this or this, and that can never be fluid or alter or change, I think is, antithetical to the human journey, and always has been. We've just told ourselves that we have to climb into these boxes, and that box even includes, what does marriage look like? It's this, and the second it's not this and this, we have to break up and go through this traumatic, expensive process of breaking that marriage up. That's insane. And that's not understanding, I believe, what the human journey has been for all of history, is we were pack animals. We lived in villages and communities, and we never said, I need to find that one person who fulfills all of my social, intimacy, philosophical, needs. The you complete me idea, that puts so much pressure on another human being, that puts so much pressure on a relationship. Then we isolate ourselves in these little buildings we call houses. And those are some of the loneliest people in the world, are married people, because I have to fulfill this person's whole being, or else we have to divorce. It's crazy. So I think the question of asking a person what their sexuality is really pointless. The question more is who are you, and how does that relate to intimacy between different people of apparently different genders, etc. And intimacy really doesn't just mean sex. I mean, it means, who do I share my life with? Who do I go really deep with? And I know this is long, and you can just determine if you want to use it or not, but in the church world, you have these men's groups, because we're all hungry to go deep with somebody, and we feel if you get a bunch of men together. But what I found is, those groups generally are don't do porn, let's go play basketball. That's not deep, that's not intimate, that's not living life together. And gender and sexuality, sharp definitions get in the way of all of that. And so I don't really sit around a lot and try to define what my sexuality is. I just say, I'm sitting across from this really interesting person today. I'm sitting across from this really interesting person today. What do I care what their gender or sexuality is?
Do you find yourself attracted to men at all?
I find myself attracted to all kinds of human beings, and particularly to people I was told I couldn't relate to and be attracted to and be in intimate relationships with, because now I find that diversity of all kinds of characteristics is so much more fun to be around than the homogeneous world I grew up in, and the homogeneous world that our society's trying to recreate in Make America Great Again. There's nothing beautiful about everybody looking and acting and thinking and being the same.
So that was the interview with Paul. It was about 45 minutes long. And, my takeaways with this were really what a genuine person. The story was pegged as an authentic life. And I do believe that Paul really is living that authentic life. What we ran into was the fact that, Paul's controversial, and Paul knows he's controversial. He is talking about things like religion and sexuality and politics in a really big way on his social media. He has a podcast that airs on TikTok with more than 128,000 followers, big following too on Instagram. And so, some of the comments pertain towards that. Some people said, I really didn't hone in enough on the podcast itself and the content that he creates. I really went into this story with just what is it like to set a goal of living your most authentic life and focusing really upon that. We did mention the fact that, there was this content that was out there, but that really wasn't really the focal point, I feel, of the story. Obviously, Paul's very well known. He was a sports reporter for KC24, married to Ashley Swearingen, the mayor of Fresno for 2 terms, and now has this following on social media. And so, we talked about what it's like for him to have dissociative identity disorder, more commonly known as multiple personality disorder, talked about mental health, as you heard during that interview. But I really appreciated the fact that Paul was so willing to be so open and talk about such personal things, like what this is like for Ashley and for their children, what this is like for him to be able to come to this consensus that this is the life that Paul wants to live and lead, and what that means to him and to his family, and that he really, I think, is at a point where he doesn't really care about the judgment of others. And I thought that was really profound. That was a big takeaway from me with this story. We're going to talk more about this interview with Paul Swearingen, with Brianna Bias, coming up in future episodes of this podcast. But for now, that is the pilot version of Draft to Deadline Inside the Reporter's Notebook. I hope you liked it. We have many more episodes to come where we're going to take you inside full interviews. And until next time, I hope that you stay well, and I cannot wait to share the next project that I'm working on with you soon.